How is it June already? Seriously, how is it June already? Welcome back to the latest edition of the South Coast Sellers Club. As you already know, today is about what's in it for them. So we're going to be building out a whole host of good stuff for you to utilize in your business, making sure that you are putting the customer first and foremost. And for those of you that haven't been here before, my name's Bennett. I'm the managing partner of Second Voice. And Second Voice is a business that helps B2B startups grow. Pretty straightforward. I've got a massive passion for sales, and I make sure that we try and share as much value here, both between the group, from me, from our speakers, so that you can start to take that away into your own companies and own ideas ASAP. So welcome and thanks for giving up your time to join us today. So if you haven't been before, again, this is a meetup series, and we're trying to build a community down here, so that salespeople can come together, sales leaders, founders of startups, at the end goal to win more customers. That is ultimately what we want. We're running regular events. We have run regular events. It'll be more about the future of the South Coast Sellers Club towards the end of the session. And we've got lots of practical advice. We've got a private LinkedIn group that you can come and join as well. And it's a safe space to ask questions if you're working on a proposal, if you're working on a particular client opportunity. If you can't knock down the door of a prospect, ask the question. You know, we're more than happy to help, and we continue to help, and we've got a great bunch of people that can offer advice. So what's happening today? If you've been hiding under a rock, I'll let you know. So we've got the fantastic Bridget Fox joining us today. So she's CEO and founder of Ravseed, which is her own consultancy focusing on helping tech startups launch, go to market and scale aggressively. She's also voted last year in the top 50 sales leaders by Sales Confidence. So it's really great to get somebody else with some expert sales experience in the group, adding lots of value, and she's got a hell of a story to tell as well, so we look forward to that. So session one, we're going to be looking at how we're building out ideal customers and personas, and after that we'll ask you to go into breakout rooms and workshop for a bit of networking, and coming up with a few ideas that you can apply today. And then the second session is all about building out that value proposition, and again back into workshops and networking in different groups so that you can hopefully sell to the people that you're with, but equally learn from their experiences as well, because you don't have to be an expert salesperson to have seen a thing or two and offer some valid feedback. And then after that, we'll be closing out and letting you know about what comes next for the South Coast Sellers Club over the rest of the year. But before we jump into that, I'm going to pass you over to our dear friend Steve Rackley, who many of you will know, co-founder of Silicon Brighton and general Brighton hero. So over to you, Steve.
Ben, what an intro. How is it June already? Yeah, great shout. Goodness me. Great that we've got the weather though, at last. Long overdue. Hi everyone. Just want to say a massive thanks for everyone coming along today. Give you my normal little intro. For anyone who's new to us, we are a community-led initiative to support digital growth across the South Coast. We began back in late 2019, so about 18 months ago now, by working with the local tech groups to help raise their profile and provide individuals, just like everyone here, with free opportunities for networking, training, upskilling and development to try and help everyone benefit through the sharing of expertise and the forming of new connections and partnerships. So today we have run over 80 events, can't believe it. And we've given a platform to hundreds of speakers to share their knowledge. If you haven't come across Silicon Brighton before, then I'd urge you to take a few minutes later to visit our website. It's siliconbrighton.com. You can learn about upcoming events and you can browse through some of the great resources and speaker talks from the previous sessions, including all the South Coast Sellers. You can also sign up there to both our community hub and to our newsletter. So on our community hub, you can reach out to all the other members of the Silicon Brighton community, along with all the meetups we support. And on our newsletter, it's on the footer at the bottom of the website. If you sign up there, you'll be informed about everything that is happening locally in tech. That's enough from me, I think. Ben, back to you. Everyone else, I'll see you in the chat and I'll be in the breakout rooms later. And thanks very much.
Thank you very much, dear boy. Cool. Well, so we appreciate everybody's busy, so we're going to crack straight on. As I mentioned, our guest speaker today is Bridget Fox, and I know from looking at her profile, having spoken with her over the last few weeks, this is one individual that has got a phenomenal amount of experience and a lot of value to add. So I'm going to welcome Bridget to the stage and say hello to everybody.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me, everyone.
How you doing? All right?
Yeah, great. Although, thanks, Steve, for rubbing in the weather, because I'm dialing in from a kitchen in sunny Yorkshire and it's about 15 degrees. So I'm watching everybody else on Instagram sunning themselves in London and being quite jealous about it, really. But anyway.
Well, we've all got a choice where we are. Yorkshire's it. It works for you. It works for you. You're welcome down here whenever you want, though. You know that.
Yes, very much. Normally based in London, so looking forward to getting back to the plus 20 temperatures.
Well, listen, so I know who you are. Steve knows who you are. But for the benefit of everybody else here, can you just give us a bit of background about you and your experience and set the scene for us?
Yeah, of course. So as sort of Steve and Ben have mentioned, I'm founder and CEO of Ravseed, and Ravseed is all about helping founders of early stage businesses to get their first sales across the line, but also ultimately scale their sales and revenue engines and drive growth. For my sins, I've spent the last 9 years in B2B SaaS, so have been an early employee at two hyper growth SaaS startups, Databricks and MuleSoft, where I really learnt my craft. Kind of was with MuleSoft all the way through the IPO, so kind of really experienced kind of that trajectory from early stage, kind of bootstrapping everything together right through to kind of a really, really structured sales and revenue machine. The last couple of years of my career, though, I've been spending with much earlier stage businesses, so kind of more of the seed to Series A. Obviously, completely different set of challenges, but I think fundamentally a lot of the best practice methodologies, the best kind of sales techniques can really be transferred and kind of leveraged by early stage founders and salespeople. So that's what I'm doing now, and hopefully we can impart some of the learnings from that into today's chat.
Awesome. Well, we've already had a comment earlier as people asking, is this just business to business or can this apply to business consumer as well? And I think what we're going to go through is methodologies, right? So there's some good ideas. We'll give you some good tools to take away and actually use, but how you apply them into your type of business is entirely up to you. So if you're selling to consumers or other businesses, these frameworks should work for both, because at the end of the day, it's about providing value, right? So just to make sure we're entirely clear on that. So talk us through, right? We're up and running. This is session one. What are we covering off first?
Yeah, so session one, and I guess the whole kind of session kind of agenda today is about two of the common pitfalls that I see. And the first is this idea, particularly amongst a founding team, that once you hire salespeople, you're off to the races with revenue, right? Salespeople will just turn up and sell. That's what they do, right? So all they really need is to know what your product does, and then they can go in and start bringing the contracts in. And I think the experience I've had both, as a salesperson, but also working with founders, building those teams, is that's absolutely not the case. Unfortunately, there is kind of a level of groundwork and foundation that really needs to be done and documented and kind of shared for salespeople to actually get up and running and be successful and start driving that growth. So session one is really all about that. It's what are the key foundations, those kind of foundational I guess, cornerstones that you need in order for salespeople to come on board and be successful. Second session is then all about how you have those sales conversations and how you drive that value and build value propositions that compel action, that are all about your customer and their pain points, and not about just what you're offering to them. So those are the kind of the two things that we're going to talk about today.
Brilliant. And for those that were at the last session, we spoke with a guy called Ron Tanner, really capable individual who was exploring how to conduct a meeting, right, to get the information out of your prospects. I guess this dovetails nicely into that, in the fact that a lot of the pre-setup will allow you to demonstrate, you've identified the right person to get in the room with in the first place. You have the meeting that we spoke about with Ron on the last session, and then the value propositions is all about, I've understood the needs of the customer, either in the meeting or through generic research, which we'll come on to in a bit. But now I'm turning that into real value propositions, benefit statements, hammering home the value. So kick us off. Where would you start on something like this? So it's, there's a whole lot of things to be getting through. So what are some of the key things that our audience can kick off with? You're muted.
Thank you. It won't let me unmute myself, and I
Okay.
I have a
No,
special
no.
guest in the background, which is my 1-year-old dog, who seems to be making some noises. So I apologize. But it wouldn't be a Zoom session, right, without a child or a pet getting involved. So
We're all human. It happens. Don't worry about it.
exactly. So I think where I kick off. So I wanted to share kind of 3 key things to get in place before you think about, either hiring a full sales team or really kind of going to market. And I think the caveat I would just say to all of this is that this doesn't stay static. This will evolve over time. It should evolve as you get feedback, from being on the front lines and speaking with prospects, with partners, and with other people in the ecosystem. But the idea really is that these 3 kind of foundational steps should form the basis of a playbook, and that playbook should be kind of how you talk about yourself, how you go to market, how you focus your efforts, and also what you don't do, which I think is also really important. Apologies for that. So kind of step 1 really is all about market research. And it might sound very obvious, but I think market research should really be done in order to narrow your focus and to develop an ideal customer profile, right? An ideal customer profile, super, super important to focus your efforts as a sales team, and to decide, which companies or industries or even personas are going to be the most receptive to your solution based on the problems and challenges that they're going to be facing in their role or in their industry. So what you're really looking for is to kind of document and identify a market gap or opportunity, and identify what pain points are being felt and by who and by where. Again, you're not just looking to have a general knowledge, you're looking really for pain points and challenges that are not being addressed by kind of other solutions. Yeah. Think about specific needs as being kind of value drivers. What's going to drive someone from, a buyer's perspective to actually invest time in thinking about a solution, and what are their alternatives today as well? How are they currently addressing that problem?
Okay, so interestingly, the problem piece is going to be the foundation of everything, right? So a lot of the companies that I've worked with have either built some tech or deliver a service. They're expert in their fields, and it's like, right, people now want this because someone's walked the path before me. How important is it to identify both general problems but also specific needs of individuals or roles?
Yeah, I think this is the tricky one, is there's no shortcut to this. So you can do a lot of desk-based research, you can do a lot of competitive analysis by, just getting onto Google and doing research, reading journals, attending events. But I think when it comes to the persona pain point, like who do we target and what messages do we use, you really have to do customer-based interviews. So a lot of the startups I work with are kind of balancing this, sales meeting type discovery conversation with, a sort of almost like a product development, product insight discovery, which they're going to use to kind of inform their product roadmap and how they build their service, but ultimately is going to help them to refine and shape how they take that message to different personas as well. So yeah, no shortcut, unfortunately. It does take time, but it's important to actually get on the ground and test your ideas with people that you would be targeting.
100%. One of the useful hacks I found is this exercise is also a sales exercise as well. Yes, you're reaching out for feedback and insight and input, but in doing so, you're giving yourself an excuse to have a conversation with someone that isn't asking them for money. And psychologically, that's just more comfortable. So when you've actually got your initial group of testers in, it's like, look, please give me some feedback. Please tell me what you're worried about. Ask the good open questions to get all the information you can. But you've then expanded your network straight away. So before you even start selling, after you've got your feedback, that individual should be prospect number 1. And so it just takes that stigma away from the contacting people for money versus contacting them from information. But yeah. So what else would you do?
I'd just say caveat to that though is, if you are intending to try and sell to someone, don't dress it up as a nice conversation about feeding back into our products and then try and hit them with a let's do it. Or why don't we do a trial? I think it's really important to be up clear with your intention and to kind of balance that information gather with a sales pitch. And again, I'm really sorry about my dog, but he's obviously really excited by what we're talking about.
He loves sales.
Okay.
So what do we do to start building out those profiles?
Yeah, so I think the market research, right, should help you to identify, an ideal customer profile. And the ideal customer profile, again, it's going to have different dimensions to it. It's going to be industry, persona, potentially even geography, depending on what your solution is. But I think the next step is actually building out your value messaging framework. So, what is it specifically that you're going to say to that person. I apologize. I'm just going to close the door because he seems to be
Carry on. I'll carry on. So so one of the things that I do with my clients as well is look at the persona as the whole, and so look at the role. And one thing that really helps is if you give them a name. So a very common one that I've worked in another group, call them Alex because that's a male and female name, but who are they? And when you put a human element to it, it allows you to sort of really empathize with an individual, and then what they're doing within their role. Okay. So what are the things that are causing them problems? Is it an external factor like COVID-19? Is it something that you can see very clearly it is happening in an industry that you're serving? Is it something that's very well documented? Are marketing campaigns dropping? Are income taxes being paid late? Is it a growth issue where you can't hire the right people? Whatever world you're in, you should be able to identify the pain points of a specific role quite generically. And then through doing this research, sort of map out what it means to an individual. So look at the personality, and one of the elements, and I don't know if Brigid will touch on this, but one of the elements that I also explore is personality types as well. And that forms a really lovely basis of how you communicate with people. So some people like to be emailed, some people like to be meeting at events, other people like to have really formal conversations, other like myself, talk to me as if we were down the pub. And I think it's really understanding the human element as well as the external environmental factors as well. But Bridget, sorry, you were saying?
No. Thank you so much for filling in. Slight disaster with the puppy, so just going to rebound from that. But no, I think you're absolutely right. I think you're spot on. I think the value messaging framework is actually about like, how are you going to go and articulate what you think are, I guess, the connections between those pain points that a particular persona is feeling, and then how you uniquely address them. So, this is not about, again, kind of like detailing everything about your product and how great a certain feature is. Value is relative. So it's about saying, okay, for this particular person, let's say a C-level executive, what's really important about my solution is going to help them to de-risk their operations, or it's going to help them to drive revenue faster, or it's going to help them to innovate, right? What is it that they care about? And then connect the piece of your solution that matches to that outcome that they want to drive. So again, not a feature bash, not about you. It's all about how you actually drive their outcome and what it is about your solution that does that uniquely as well. Right?
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And also the other thing that I've explored on, and I'll share this canvas that I work on with people that go through my programs is, looking at how to break down that persona. And it doesn't just mean what's keeping me awake at night as a prospect. It's also, what am I interested in? What meetups do I regularly go to? What is my technical ability? If you're selling software and you're selling it to someone that, doesn't easily get onboarded, then the way you're going to approach is really different as well. So, understanding and setting that bedrock is something that a lot of people just don't do. And, I can speak firsthand in having done that as a salesperson in my early part of my career. You get your job, you sit at the desk, there's like, right, well, there's the list of numbers to call, and here's what we do, go sell it. And then you're telling them how great you are. It's like, look at me, how great you are. And you're expecting the customer to come to that conclusion on their own. But you absolutely have to lead them to water and then make them drink. And so it's, having this as a really strong framework and as a baseline to launch upon is going to be crucial. So, how do you make sure that, that what the model you've got is the right one? Explain that.
Yeah, so I think with the value messaging framework, it's about test and learn. So again, this is iterative. And I think it is also about how your proposition compares with competitors. I think this is a piece that gets forgotten, or it gets done once and then never gets looked at again. But the reality is, especially in tech and especially in kind of the world we live in, your message, again, should be all about how you solve a problem uniquely. That kind of unique differentiator doesn't stay different. differentiated for that long, is the reality. So it is all about that persona and their pain point, but don't forget to go back to that. Don't forget to kind of review it and to rethink, as new competitive solutions come up, or maybe just as the market changes again. COVID, great example how it shifted several industries forward, 10 years in terms of digitalization. So keep an eye on the competitive landscape, I think, is a really important one. But then I think the third thing, if we're ready to kind of move on to that third foundation you need in place, so you've got your market research, you've got an idea of who you're targeting, you've got an idea of your message in general, kind of a framework from which you can then tailor it, which we'll talk about in session 2. The third one is ultimately sales is about revenue. You need to have a business model at least in place. Like what is the salesperson going to be selling? Are they selling services? Are they selling a subscription? Are they selling a one-off license? That will really determine how that salesperson goes to market, how they build relationships, how they position the value of the product. So kind of an early test of a business model is really, really crucial. Again, might seem really obvious, but it is something that gets forgotten. It's something where many founders sort of say, okay, I can think about that when we get close to a sale, but actually it's really important for a salesperson to know how to position from day one. So that would be like the third cornerstone really, and the last cornerstone that is really crucial to think about before getting
I'd agree. The channel thing's a really interesting one, because it's, there are a number of businesses that think that the phone is the only way to sell, and the world has moved on, and as a young phone basher myself, very resistant to social selling, and it's what is this dark art? But it needs to be a good mix of everything. But I guess the point I'm coming to is that when you recognize who your audience is and why you're trying to get in front of them, you know where they are, and then you operate through those channels, delivering value in the right manner. So you mentioned there about having partnerships or going direct. Well, actually, if I'm selling to a partner to create a relationship for them to introduce me to everybody else, that proposition is entirely different, and you're probably not going to sell to them by just hitting up the phone and being like, hi, I want a new working relationship. So something like that gets nurtured. It's really, really important. So that's awesome.
Also, with partnerships as well, just to add to it, so that is another layer of what's in it for them. So then it's what's in it for the customer, but then what's in it for the partners to go and sell on your behalf. And again, having a framework, having a playbook, a documentation of the market challenge you see, the problem you solve, and how you solve it uniquely is so helpful to be able to hand that to a partner and say, look, if you want to know about the value we drive, read this, and then we're going to enable you to speak about that. Plus there should be some kind of commercial incentive for a partner.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've got a couple of minutes left in this session before we go into the breakout. So if you were going to give, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 key takeaways out of what you've just said and what we've discussed, what can everybody do this afternoon to start implementing some of these tactics?
Yeah, so the first step I actually take with a lot of my early stage startup customers is get key members of the team to write down what they think their ICP is, what they think the market challenges that they're solving.
That's ideal customer profile, right?
Yeah, ideal customer profile, and then what they think their business model is. And then I schedule a workshop and get them to read it out. And it's amazing the diversity, even amongst the same team, that people, the way that people speak about themselves or who they think they're targeting, right? So that would be kind of like tip number 1 really, is write it down, compare notes with your team, and then start working on consolidating that and kind of making it uniform, having a way of speaking about yourself that's consistent. I think the second one is, again, business model. Really think about your business model and what the impact is for sales. We didn't really talk about it just then, but maybe that you want to be very product led and use the website and automate as much of that sales cycle as possible, and really have your salespeople coming in for the big hitters, for the big contracts that are a bit more time and face intensive, I suppose. I think that would be my top takeaways.
Fantastic. And as I said, what we'll do after the event, everyone who's here will email out some tips and cheat sheets and other additional docs that are going to help you get underway with that, so to give you a full advantage. Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. I think, it's something that's often overlooked and is really the most important thing. And when you're coming to learn to sell and you're being told to research, it's kind of like, but actually, you need that baseline. Otherwise, you're just going to be knocking on doors and getting turned away. And it's, making sure you're hitting the right targets when you need to. So what we're going to do as an audience now, as a group, we're going to split you out into breakout rooms. And some of you may have this already. I certainly know a lot of you do because we've done it together. But if you haven't, and this is something you're going to want to work through, what I'd like you to do now is go into these groups and discuss what you think your ideal customer profile is. As Bridget has said, that could be role, it could be pain points, it could be a whole host of things. But ask questions of each other about how you got to that point, how you decided that was your ideal customer. So we're going to leave you in a room for 15 to 20 minutes to each chat through these points between yourselves. And it'd be great if you could come out of that at least with an idea of who your new or improved ideal customer might be. So if I could kindly ask Sean, our production whiz, to split you up into little groups, that would be fantastic, and we'll regroup in about 15 or 20 minutes. Slowly let everyone creep back in. Cool. So I think that's everyone back. If not, we'll give a few seconds just for a few more people to come. But so hopefully you've managed to do a bit of LinkedIn exchanging, getting a better idea of who your customers might be and what their needs are, and developing out that ideal customer persona. What we're going to do, we're going to keep all questions to the end. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And then we'll collate them all and we'll go through. Bridget and I will try and answer them at the end. And any questions that go unanswered, we'll put them into our LinkedIn group and we'll answer them there as well so everybody can see what's going on. So I hope that was a worthwhile exercise for you guys and you've got, as I said, a better idea of who that customer is and what it is that they want. So next we're going to move on to our second session, which is about building value. So Bridget, back over to you. Talk us through what we're going to be doing here.
Yeah, so I think first session was all about kind of building out, a framework, a kind of framework that you can apply to different customers and that you can use in your marketing material, just getting really tight on what it is exactly that you're going to provide in terms of value. And I think this session is more about how you communicate that value when selling to a specific customer. So when you're in front of a customer that meets or doesn't meet your ICP. So I think this is often where I see value frameworks go out of the window, is where the rubber hits the road. I think you can create great documents, create great messaging, but once you get in front of a customer, sometimes people are really excited just to do a demo or talk through a list of features and functions. So I think the key, and hopefully what you'll take from this session, is about how to avoid that happening with the right prep, but also the right approach to having those value-led conversations.
Cool. So what do we start with? What's the idea, the mindset?
Starts with prep. So I think there's kind of three things I wanted to cover in the session. One is how do you prep? How do you actually build valuable conversations? How do you build value for a customer? Starting with your kind of pre-call prep. The second will be about discovery, and then the third one will be about kind of that value proposition that is tailored to the customer. And I think prep is really important. Again, it might sound really obvious, but if you've built a value framework, if you've got an idea of who your ideal customer profile is, take the time before you meet with a customer to think about, does this person at this company look and feel kind of like the ideal customer profile that I'm talking to, or that I've kind of built out? Think about what your hypothesis is. I like to think about this as having a hypothesis of what their needs are based on what your framework is, and trying to almost anticipate what that person might be the most interested in. You can't guess it all. So some of it is research and some of it is just testing it out in the actual discovery call itself and in a sales call. But if you at least go in with a structure in your mind of what they might be interested in, you can kind of test your hypothesis with good discovery conversations. So LinkedIn's great, getting a sense of obviously what people might be interested in. Often people post, the kind of groups that they're involved in, or write articles, or, kind of promote things that they're sort of interested and have a perspective on. That's a really good place to start.
Yeah, brilliant. And the thing that I often find as well is, having been guilty of it a lot, is you sell because you're proud, and you're making assumptions that the individual on the other side of the table has both the same understanding and experience that you've got. And it really is about joining the dots and making sure you've been so clear with what it is you're trying to convey. So our last session with Ron, we spoke about asking the good questions, really understanding their situation, and that definitely applies, right? Because you've got to be able to pitch something that's appropriate, and not just throw everything at it, including the kitchen sink, and hoping that they pick out what's important for them. So, I mean, I have a way of structuring out these value propositions, but I'm keen to hear how you would work it through the customer to help them get to that point. What do you do?
Yeah, so I think you've led nicely onto that second, I guess, point. So there's the kind of the pre-call or the pre-meeting prep, like having a hypothesis before you even get to building a value proposition. So what you've just spoken about, you've really got to kind of do good discovery. And I think, again, this is something that goes out of the window when we feel time pressure. If we've got a 30-minute meeting and you feel like the customer's expecting a demo, you might maybe squeeze a couple of questions in at the beginning, but not really take the time to do the kind of deeper discovery. But if you skip that step, your value proposition isn't going to be tailored. It's not going to be right. You'll potentially miss opportunities as well to position something that could be really useful and valuable to the customer as well. I think there's another point here as well, which is sometimes customers don't actually know that they have a pain point, which sounds odd, but customers, if they already have identified a pain, they're probably already looking for a solution. You might be in quite a competitive situation. There's obviously a lot of data now that shows that by the time someone actually speaks to a salesperson, they're kind of like 70%, 80% into their buying cycle already. They've gone to your website, they've kind of talked maybe even to competitors, they've spoken to other maybe users of your service. So I think it's really important that you're asking the right questions, big questions about how they're currently doing things. What would the future look like if they could do things differently? Like, what are the key KPIs that they're responsible for? And bringing some insight to the table in that discovery too about the kinds of challenges you hear about with your other customers that they're maybe not thinking about at the moment. That kind of concept of insight selling and bringing that in the discovery call can actually open up opportunities that you might not know exist if you don't ask the questions.
I love that point. And if I'm building out benefit statements, value propositions for customers, it's very much what I can do for them. But sometimes just being recognized that your onions is a really good thing. It's like, well, even if it's a competitor just got purchased, or a key individual at another business is moving on, or something that they're not going to readily be available on Google, but you've got insight to be able to inform them and add value. And so building value is not just what I can do for you, it's what I also know about the larger ecosystem in the worlds in which you work. Really strong point.
All that good work from session one, the market research, knowing your space, knowing the challenges, that's absolutely right. And just to put I guess a kind of a final point on that is, in a recession or in at a time when people are kind of tightening their belts like they have been through COVID in many ways, actually the type of salesperson that is the most successful was what they call a challenger seller, if you're familiar with the challenger methodology. And they actually don't just build relationships with people and kind of provide solutions. They bring insight, they bring knowledge, they bring awareness of things that maybe the customer isn't thinking about. So that's a pretty standard methodology, pretty easy just to Google challenger sale, but they are the top performing salespeople and the top performing sales organizations, the ones that take that approach.
Yeah, and that is about having like you say, a good arsenal of questions that are going to help open up the customer's needs. So I've got a service business or I've got a tech business. I mean, software's pretty easy because the features are the features. Service is slightly more complicated because there's probably a whole host of things you can do. But short of throwing everything at it, what would be your advice to have really sort of concise, structured way to make sure you're hitting the nail on the head every time?
Yeah, I think it's about knowing what your unique differentiators really are, and that whether that's a feature or a service. Like it could be a service guarantee, it could be the industry expertise that you bring. You might be specialized in a particular sector. Again, that allows you to also bring insight about how you might deliver a service differently. A value proposition, just kind of moving on to that third point, is really about how you articulate the value of your service and how it's going to uniquely solve the customer's problem, a specific customer's problem. And I think there's an interesting point here as well, which is if you're sat there thinking, well, this customer is talking about these challenges, and actually I'm not sure that we solve those challenges, or I'm not sure that I can do those uniquely, it's maybe one to think about. Is it in our ICP? Is it actually an opportunity worth pursuing? Is there a competitor that if they're speaking to might be positioning kind of more strongly here in terms of the value they can bring? I think a lot of salespeople are quite scared to qualify out. And actually, if your unique differentiators, the things that make your service or product special, aren't resonating with that customer, that's okay. But just know that, and know that early, so that you don't spend lots of time in a sales cycle with someone who won't buy from you. So a little bit, I guess, off track, but I think it's important. And again, goes back to just knowing what it is exactly that you can bring in terms of value to that persona in that company, in that particular industry as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the frameworks that I use, and it's almost like it's as basic as a spreadsheet really, but it will enable anybody coming into the business to have the persona in one column, and in the next column all of their individual needs or problems that you've either researched or gathered over time. And then next to those needs you'll have either the features or the services of what you do. So I don't know, it might be you can record X amount of video and store it in the cloud, or you can get your accounts done in 25 minutes, whatever it is. That's the feature or service that you provide. Mm-hmm. And then in the next column, you have the advantage of doing that. So the advantage of doing that is that, it's more what the product or service does. It enables you to do this really quickly. Most people stop selling or stop using selling their features. They'll stop at what it does. Mm-hmm. And actually the bit that's going to land you on the money is telling them how it solves the problem, right? So as we all know, you sell the things that they want fixed. You don't sell how you do it. So the last statement is a benefit statement to that specific need. So if it's, hi, my name's Tracy, I work in marketing and I haven't got the resource. All right, well, the feature of what we do is, the advantage of doing it with us is that X, Y, Z. The benefit to you is, and an easy way to get this statement right is you start with which means. Mm-hmm. Which means you don't need to have the resource, because what you then do is tie that benefit statement straight back to the need. And you can just scroll up and down that spreadsheet all day long and get the answers to every single need you want. And I'll share that with other people later as well. But I mean, have you got any sort of templates or ideas or things that the individuals here today can take away and start to wrap around to have it as those killer offerings?
Yeah, so I think I use a readout statement that is similar, which is, for these customers, in these contexts, we provide these features that enable these outcomes. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. And it just means, like you said, you don't stop at the level of features, you talk about their outcomes. But I think a key thing there as well is, kind of almost taking it a step further to say, you might not need the resource, but that will save you, i.e. business justification, 3 salaries a year, or, a salary or an extra employee here, or I don't know, kind of X number of hours in lost time. And I think when you're thinking about these value propositions, there's always going to be a value proposition for that person that makes sense to them, but there's always going to be an economic buyer as well, perhaps someone completely differently that isn't as connected to that pain point necessarily, but still needs to sign the check. And so I use an ROI business kind of value calculator sometimes. Sometimes they're quite expensive, sometimes they're really simple, but it's just calculating what is the impact of doing it faster, doing it with fewer resources, doing it at lower risk, for example, by avoiding fines, things like that. So just taking it one step further and always trying to quantify it just makes it a lot easier to actually get that through a procurement process and get an economic buyer to sign off.
Oh, totally. And I mean, if it's taking me X amount of time, putting a value against that, all of a sudden people get very motivated to make decisions. It's a that monetizing a problem is a very powerful tool. So value we've explored obviously is it can be insight industry wide. It can also be around that value proposition, building out those benefit statements off of the features and services that you have, absolutely tying it back to their need. I've sworn about this before, but it's not about you. No one cares about your business. They just want to sleep at night and have something solved. If you can solve it, then all of a sudden you've got their interest. So do remember that. And having these value propositions, these benefit statements, leaks into every element of your business. So it informs the tone of voice and the copy on your website. It informs how you're booking appointments. It informs how you're doing lead capture. Every single element that is client facing. This research and this formula of building out these propositions leads everything. And have you got any examples of stuff you've done either in growth roles or with clients where you can talk about some of the outcomes of the work that you've done here, please?
Yeah, completely. So actually a really good example of this is how we reshaped our value propositions at a company I worked at called Totem. So I was head of revenue for Totem at seed stage. Totem was in a HR tech space and used to sell basically like a work social media app. So the idea was that, people could connect with their colleagues wherever they worked. Didn't matter if you were in the office. It was pre-COVID as well, so really kind of focused on services businesses where consultants would be out on the road, or retail where there wasn't really an office hub. And the pandemic hit, and actually what we realized, there was this opportunity, again, kind of market forces shifting, because executives all of a sudden and managers had no idea what the sentiment of their teams was. They couldn't walk around the office anymore and go, well, this team seemed to be okay. This seems to be a bit down in the dumps. Maybe I should spend a bit more time doing some social. They were completely blind, right? They were just going on what was being told to them over Zoom, which doesn't always reflect reality. So we identified a market need. We identified the opportunity to almost create like a cultural measurement on top of this social feed that we had, because people were engaging in a really authentic way. And we actually developed a product that enabled businesses, executives to kind of measure their culture across a few different axes. But what it meant actually was we were now targeting not the kind of, immediate line manager, but the heads of HR, the chief people officers, and even CEOs who were the most interested in these kind of business analytics. And we had to completely shift our value statements because we were no longer trying to sell, to someone who was interested in the app. We were selling to someone who was interested in the, in the measurement piece. So we had to refactor the website. We changed our website from being very focused on the social media app to the outcomes that would be driven by understanding your culture, namely reducing employee churn, improving employee satisfaction, increasing productivity, kind of key metrics that execs care about. We actually even changed our business model, right? So we started a freemium model for the app itself to kind of grow network effect, and then started charging a premium for the culture insights on the top of it, and completely shifted, the way that we did sales pitches and how we targeted, because, it was a different market opportunity. So I think that's probably the best example. It is, again, it sounds like work, it is work, but when you kind of find a product market fit like that, and you see that there is a great opportunity to exploit, it's worth kind of taking the time to turn those value propositions outwards and investing in marketing. One of my key insights and learnings from that role, and actually from working with other customers at similar stages, assume you need marketing faster than you think. Sometimes it's sales before marketing, and in a lot of cases, actually marketing before sales would make a bit more sense. So, especially in the digital world.
That's a big point that often gets pondered, is who to hire first, and what should we be looking to do. I think you've, and those of you that have been before hear me talk about growth as an umbrella to sales and marketing, and actually it's all going through a bit of an evolution. So who do you get in? But yeah, I tend to agree. From my perspective, I think sales is slowly becoming more of a marketing within, more of a function within marketing, and a tool. You just got to sharpen that tool, be really good at sales, but marketing are doing a hell of a lot of the attraction piece. So yeah, that's a phenomenal story, and then quite a transition as well. But I guess if you're doing all of this work again in your business, you might be a sole trader, or you might have a lot of people, but if you're doing that work again, it's fresh in the mind, and then it aligns everybody, right? So instead of sales going off one way, marketing going off the other, which is really common, you've got that coherence there and a singular direction, which is really strong.
Absolutely right.
Cool. So, could you summarize this sort of section as some of the key points for the guys and girls to take away, please?
Yeah, so I think key things, so value propositions, they're all about the customer. You can use your value messaging framework that you developed as a base, but go and do your pre-call prep, like understand what that person might be interested in based on, other customers you worked with that look and feel similar. When you get into those sales conversations, like make the time to do great discovery. Discovery is going to open up opportunities for you to kind of see things that maybe the customer isn't seeing about their own business, and that gives you the opportunity to bring insight. But ultimately, if you're not doing deep discovery and regular discovery, you're not going to be able to tailor your proposition to your customer needs as well. And then I think just that final point there was, your value propositions, when you actually build and articulate them, they need to be tailored. They need to demonstrate an understanding of the impact and the ROI that they're going to drive. And ultimately, again, all about the customer. How are you going to make their lives better, improve their performance, improve their KPIs, rather than, we're going to give you this bag of features and go work it out for yourself.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. And if you guys have got any questions around structuring that or workshopping it or getting to a position where you're putting pen to paper and you don't know where to start, you can either ask the questions here. Bridget and I will be happy to answer any questions, or absolutely contact us both on LinkedIn, or reach out to us however means you wish, and we'll be able to dive in and help whenever we're free. So we're going to jump out into another breakout session. We're going to mix it up slightly, so you may have some similar faces as last time. You may get a whole new set of new friends to play with. But this time round, what I would like you to do is sit back and really consider 3 things that your ideal customer will struggle with, 3 problems that they've got that you can solve. So that will form the basis of the thinking about building the value propositions. So from the first session, you will have your ideal customer. From this session, we want 3 problems that they're going to face. And off the back of that, how are you going to communicate an effective value proposition to meet the stakeholders' needs in the business? So you might want to do that through the features, advantages, benefits framework I mentioned, or you loop back and do exactly what Bridget said, and it's about building the value in for the customer. Monetary terms, time saving, processes improved. What does it mean for the individual that you're selling to? So we're going to jumble you up into groups again. You've got another 15-20 minutes to circulate amongst yourselves, and please get some questions together. We're going through the session today at a good pace, so we'll have time to do some Q&A afterwards. So think up some questions, and then we'll address them when you come back in the room in 20 minutes. So off you go into your groups. Thank you. Hi everyone, welcome back. Just a couple more seconds, make sure everyone's in. I'd like to formally apologise for the people in Neil Hazinga's room. He's got a dodgy electrician, and he sends his apologies. Jokes aside, I thought that it was a really good exercise to do, and I regularly do it for my own business, and hopefully that has given you a bit of a clearer view of the who and the why you're selling to people, but then obviously making sure that you're using the right tools for the job and hitting the nail on the head with a hammer and nothing other than the right tool. So were there any questions? We haven't had any questions in the chat today, but if you have any, we've got a couple of minutes we can try now. If not, we'll obviously head over to the LinkedIn group.
I did have a question, if that's okay.
You please fire away. Who's that?
It's Sam.
Hi, Sam.
Hiya. I was just wondering how much time you would spend on this pre-prep work, because I've worked in lots of different industries, and some of them are more lenient than others. I've worked in jobs where you've got to make 100 calls a day, and I've worked in jobs where you've got to make 10 calls a day. So where would you pitch that pre-prep work?
Great question. So I would say no more than 15 minutes, but also you can do it in 5. I think the key here is if you know that your value framework is there, your messaging, your kind of core ICP is built out, you can kind of quickly compare them, right? So you can kind of quickly go, okay, let's say I've got a call with Coca-Cola, we work with Pepsi, great. I'm going to think about the kind of key value props that Pepsi saw and think about how I take those into the call. So obviously, I think pre-call prep when you're first starting with a new value proposition, or maybe you're new in a company, takes a bit more time. Over time, if you've got a playbook to refer back to, you can do it in 5 minutes.
Cool, thank you.
Cheers, Sam.
No worries.
Any more for any more?
I have a question.
Hi, Lisa.
Hello. We provide transport predominantly for the NHS and private hospitals. Now, what I find is I can't even get these people on the phone because they've got the patients there, and it's just trying to break through. And if I do manage to get somebody that is willing to talk to me, I can hear people screaming in the background, or maybe it's too busy. And they're not engaged with the phone call. And then they'll be like, yeah, I'll pass this on. And I know how do I crack that? And so what I've done is I've started to email, but then I'm fearful that I'm not getting the personal touch, and it's really difficult. So is there a different strategy, or is it a case of keep calling and then possibly pissing them off because they're actually trying to do a very important job looking after the patients? They don't want to talk to me.
It's a tough one. I think, I'm going to be honest, I've never sold in that way before, but I think the key there is about, meeting the customer where they are. So, some customers and industries are really receptive to digital and email, and they hate cold calls. Some are really into cold calls, but they hate getting tons of emails and they'll ignore them because actually their inbox is full. We used to do campaigns where we sent things physically to offices as well to kind of rise above the noise, because we knew we were in a very competitive industry. So, we sent.
What did you send?
Well, so this is a funny thing. It might not make sense, but it made sense to us at the time. So I used to sell integration software. It's like the plumbing of software. It connects, integrate, applications together, but it's actually really important from a business outcome perspective, because if all your systems aren't talking to each other, then you've got loads of silos, right? So we used to send baskets to CIOs, chief information officers, with a packet of spaghetti and some Italian like deli things saying, fix your spaghetti mess, right? As in your spaghetti mess of like disconnected systems. So it was just something quirky. It was something memorable. It's something that just, we sent to high value stakeholders, and at least got them to say, oh, do you know what? These guys, they made an effort. Let's have a conversation and make time for it. And if you can find something that maybe would resonate with your buyer, think about, doing that. I wouldn't send out thousands of them, be selective, but it might be a way to jump out of the noise.
The point about annoying someone, Lisa, I think, if you're doing it delicately, and comes back to adding value, right? If you're, I read this article, thought it might be of interest to you, or I heard that so-and-so happened, just putting this on your radar. You're not asking them for anything, but you're staying front of mind. And, there's a couple of individuals in this group today who we were actually having a session yesterday and talking about events promotions teams. And like, they keep asking me to speak, and now I think I'm ready to go and do it. It's like, well, front of mind, because they keep coming back. So it's not about, hi, are you interested yet? It's about, hi, I saw something that might be of interest to you.
Oh, it's so hard though, because I'm calling up hospital wards. Yeah, I need to try a different angle.
Jump in the group, Lisa, and we can have a chat about it and get in touch, because I'm just conscious of time. I don't mean to be rude, but we're more than happy to continue this conversation. So please get in touch. So with that in mind, thank you very much. If you did have a question, put it in the chat, stick it in the LinkedIn group, and we will get to it. As always, your time is valuable, so we appreciate you giving it to us, and we hope that you've got something to take away today and apply to your businesses. Thank you so much to Brigid for coming along and sharing your expertise with us, and for the dog. That was very entertaining, and I know, bless it, that it just shows the human side of selling as well. We're all human beings. But thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
No
Thanks
worries.
for connecting as well. Look forward to speaking to you.
Awesome. So as always, you can, as I said, find us on LinkedIn, or you can go and join the Silicon Brighton Hub. So if you're not in there yet, this is a nice network all around Brighton of different businesses, service providers, potential customers. Wouldn't that be nice? So jump in there and become a member and have a look at the resources that the guys at Silicon Brighton offer. And up next is a slide for our LinkedIn group if you're not in it. So equally, if you can't access any of these QR codes for whatever reason, I've got everyone's email who signed up today, so you will get an email from me with all of the information how to join both groups. So as far as South Coast Sellers Club in its current guise, we will be taking a break over summer, and we'll be coming back in and around September with some new formats, some new ideas, and a few different channels. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll make sure to keep you all posted, but wishing you an absolutely wonderful weekend when it arrives. Have a great rest of the week, and thank you very much from me and all of the team at Second Voice in Silicon Brighton. Have a great day.